Hello, this is Simon with a view from the outside. A good man should know his limitations. Or so said Clint Eastwood in one of his many outings as the grisly policeman Dirty Harry. And I feel I know mine. I have no idea if Trump as president is to be a remake of Omen Part 4 and Apocalypse Now rolled into one, or whether he and his companions will be subsumed by and into the establishment. I have no idea if it means Brexit is doomed as a consequence, nor if North Korea will decide a preemptive nuclear strike will be the only way of overcoming his election. I know my brain will not cope and work through all the possible machinations and alternatives to see what is going to happen globally and internationally. Instead, I decided to look to see if life in Brighton had ceased, and if you were all quietly taking to your beds and waiting patiently for the end. And no, I am not denigrating people's real concerns. I just feel it's too early. For him too, he does seem to have the same expression that Boris Johnson had the day after Brexit won. A look of incredulity mixed with puzzlement. Exactly the same as a dog has that chases after cars and then one day a car brakes for whatever reason and the dog catches it. The dog sits and puts his head to one side with a look that says, I never thought that would happen. What do I do now? So whilst we wait and see, I notice that some sad and then some rather good news in your local press about Armistice Day commemorations. On the one hand, it was reported that two men in their 40s plus were going around stealing the Poppy Day collection boxes from businesses. And I quote from the Brighton Indie. One man, described as being between 25 and 30 years old, is wanted in connection with collection tin thefts at the Cobb store in South Road, Peacehaven, and the Royal Mail Delivery Office in Devonshire Square in Brexhill on Tuesday. He is also suspected of stealing a collection tin from the Pump House in Brighton's Market Street last Saturday. Police say they would also like to speak to another man who is wanted in connection with theft of collection boxes from two businesses in Hove on November the 7th. They are in Sussex Pub in Catherine's Terrace and the Card Factory in George Street. Resolution Centre Supervisor Justin Norman said, We would very much like to speak to these two men. The older man connected with the thefts in Hove is described as white, 40 to 60 years old, of large build with short greying hair. The other man, believed to be connected with the other three thefts, is white, 6 foot, 25 to 30-year-old, with black stubble. End of quote. Now, whoever are the culprits, I do not begin to understand their motivation, or their sense of what is right and wrong. It saddened me beyond belief. To have no interest or thought that they were taking money from ex-soldiers who had given their all for us. I do not begin to understand such an attitude. I just hope the culprits will be caught, but not fined or imprisoned, but made to spend their time completing community service, putting back what they took out. And then I read that the Hove Remembrance Parade was being cancelled. This at a time when the little-known auxiliaries are about to be celebrated for their incredibly heroic action. These, by the way, were volunteers who were to go underground, I mean literally underground, should the Germans invade in the dark days of 1940. Their role was to disrupt the German forces. Life expectancy for these people? 2 to 3 weeks. And yet they had countless volunteers. I do not begin to comprehend such courage. Wonderful, I thought, that they were finally being recognised as well. And then I heard of the cancelled parade and thought how sad. Because remembering the awfulness of war and the courage and the sacrifice of the soldiers and civilians caught up in the war is so important. And a day for a renewal of the determination to do whatever it takes to prevent further conflagrations. But then the next day I read the following. This time to the Argus. The people of Hove have responded to the call to help bring back their Remembrance Day parade. It comes after the Argus yesterday revealed the parade had been cancelled for the first time since the end of World War I because of dwindling numbers of veterans. Brighton and Hove City Council and the British Royal Legion, who organised the event, also said a lack of volunteer marshals and cuts to the police force were behind the decision. Instead, a larger service will be held at All Saints Church in the Drive. The Brighton parade will also still be held. Martin Warren from the Council Civic Office offered some hope on Friday, suggesting that if enough people came forward, the parade could be resurrected next year. And it did not take long before people of Hove started to come forward. Councillor Dawn Barnett of Hangleton and Knoll Ward said, "So many people have got in touch with me about it. I think it is a terrific shame there is no parade this year. So many young men from Hove have fought in wars, and it's important we remember them, especially for their families. The people of Hove always come together and look after each other. I'm sure we'll get enough people volunteering to help out, and the councillors will do all they can to help." Now, isn't that great? It just made me smile, and I thought, how lovely that a community would so quickly pull together. Of course, this is just after fireworks night. I love this night. I tend to think of it as a purely British thing, but actually I understand it is celebrated elsewhere, including New Zealand and Australia. The big difference, certainly in New Zealand, is you can only buy fireworks for 2 weeks beforehand. A real example of how we've become more prescriptive about their use. We had the luxury, my lady and I, of being able to watch them from our flat window, which overlooks much of Birmingham and the surrounding area. It really is staggering to see the sheer number of rockets endlessly reaching for the sky. Almost a wall of coloured lights sparkling and stretching across the horizon. It was a truly wonderful sight. Of course, in my day, handheld fireworks, and I don't mean just sparklers, were a common thing, as were children having the most horrific injuries, particularly to their hands. So I was not surprised to see the following in the Bognor Observer. Tees, the funeral directors, located in Canada Grove in Bognor and Regis, invited pupils from Barton's Primary School in Letherby Road, Bursted, to design posters or write poems to highlight the dangers of fireworks and bonfire nights. Mark Labram, funeral director, said, "We are keen to encourage local youngsters to understand the potential dangers and help them to stay safe on this popular annual event." It was an extremely hard decision to pick the 3 winners, but with the help from the fire station, we chose 3 names which we announced at the assembly. All children that took part received a Be Safe, Be Seen badge, and the 3 winners won a £20 book token voucher each, and were collected in a limousine and taken to the fire station, where they were given a tour and got to sit inside a fire engine. The children thoroughly enjoyed it. We would like to thank Barton's, and especially Mrs. Powell, for the opportunity to allow her pupils to take part, and to the West Sussex Fire Service and all of Bognor for their hospitality and judging skills. It's events like this that are at the heart of our community, and we love that everyone gets so involved. End of quote. That is the point, isn't it? The community thing. Not a distant government, not a big business, but the local people looking out for each other. The storms of international politics may swirl around us, but whilst endless small community projects supported by countless people who put themselves out for those around them continue, whilst there are people who give of their time for others in small ways, then life will be better. Well, it cheers the heart. Indeed, I am so invigorated and refreshed, I may even risk listening to the news again. Well, for a bit anyway. But I could not end this reflection without turning back to the 11th of the 11th of the 11th. I notice that all too often people do not wear the leaf on the poppy at the correct height, a small point, but it should be placed at 11 o'clock to remember that the armistice was called at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, 1918. I did wonder how many people actually know the history of the poppy. A quick reminder then. During the 1914-18, much of the fighting took place on Western Europe. Previously beautiful countryside was blasted, bombed, fought over again and again. The landscape quickly turned into fields of mud, bleak and barren scenes, where little or nothing could grow. Bright red Flanders poppies, however, were delicate but resilient flowers and grew in their thousands, flourishing even in the middle of the chaos and destruction. In early 1915, shortly after losing a friend at Ypres, a Canadian doctor, Lieutenant Colonel John McCree, was inspired by the sight of poppies to write a now famous poem called In Flanders Fields. McCree's poem inspired an American academic, Moyna Michael, to make and sell red silk poppies, which were brought to England by a Frenchwoman, Anna Jorine. The Royal British Legion, formed in 1921, ordered 9 million of these poppies and sold them on the 11th of November that year. The poppies sold out almost immediately, and that first ever poppy appeal raised over £106,000. a considerable amount of money at the time. This was used to help World War I veterans with employment and housing. So let me finish this reflection by giving thought of those brave souls who lost their lives during that and subsequent wars. The poem then, In Flanders Fields. In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place. And in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved. And now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders field. This has been Simon with a view from the outside. Take care.